What's up, gamers? Ever wanted to look into the future, peek into tomorrow, find out what happens next, or just save yourself from the inevitable disappointment that is E3? Well, I have news for you. Apparently this paper here will tell us what console gaming will look like in the next 10 years, but I want to prove that I'm better than paper. But before we find out what might happen in the future, we need to look at the past and present. So we might as well start with why a company might choose to stop making consoles.
Good old Sega. As is common knowledge by now, Sega went from a console manufacturer to a third party, and there's a number of reasons behind this. From a failed console to not a lot of prominent exclusives, to their mascot's late jump to 3D. And these are all important to consider because each of the main three companies can fail to make a good game or console, which could lead to their downfall. For example, Nintendo failed in the past with the Wii U, Microsoft almost ruined the Xbox One on day one and didn't put a lot of meaningful exclusives on it, and finally, even Sony messed up during the PS3's launch with its super expensive price point. Other than just this, we also need to consider PC, cloud, and VR gaming. PC gaming is the biggest out of these because it's been around almost as long as consoles have. In recent years, PC has become the best way to play most games because it can be customized to your liking instead of there being a default and a pro only. This lends well to things like streaming, meaning most big games are topped with PC players due to it having better frame rates and accessibility settings. As well as this, previous console exclusives are being ported either a year or so after the initial launch with God of War and Horizon, or day one with games like Forza, Halo, etc., which doesn't even include emulation. And on top of all of this, it's a computer, so you can do anything else a normal computer can do. Also, there's recently been a very notable rise in cloud gaming, mostly due to Google Stadia, and while you could ask almost anybody and they'd say cloud gaming is a joke, it has shown to be getting better and more widespread. Microsoft has cloud gaming built into their Game Pass bundle, Nintendo uses cloud to port a lot of AAA games that normally wouldn't fit onto the Switch, and there are rumors of Sony heavily investing into it. And yeah, it will most likely always be a side thing like VR and won't reach the popularity of PC, console, and hybrid gaming. It is important to note due to its already massive influence and how big it might be in 10 years. Finally, VR, which is a bit weird and has shown to be something other than just gaming related, with things like the Oculus Quest by Facebook being clearly gaming related right now, but most likely just going to turn into another way for them to make money. But there's also PlayStation's VR and upcoming PSVR 2, which will always be associated with gaming and could lead to some great exclusives from Sony. And this isn't even counting the already great exclusives out there for VR like Half-Life Alyx, Boneworks, and Beat Saber. VR is going to become huge, but I don't think it will ever be bigger than just console and PC gaming. But it is something to consider, even if we aren't going to be looking at a Ready Player One type world anytime soon.
Other than the influences that might take control of Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo, we also need to look at some of their current actions because they might just show some of their future plans.
Let's start with Microsoft, who have shown to be the most willing company to accept newer concepts with their aforementioned cloud service, but other than that, they also have Game Pass, which has become their main source of income from gaming. They have made multiple deals with companies like EA and Ubisoft, and even bought Bethesda for $7 billion and Activision Blizzard for a huge $70 billion, just to entice people into buying Game Pass. Xbox is only stuck around because its brand helps to get more people into the Game Pass service. Though, their most notable problem is that they have a lack of hard-hitting exclusives. While games like Psychonauts 2 and Forza Horizon 5 did great, other big names have had terrible launches like Halo Infinite, Sea of Thieves, etc. Therefore, it'd make a lot of sense for Microsoft to stop making exclusives entirely, just so they could push Game Pass. But in my opinion, this likely won't happen because the fact that name drops alone have gotten people into Xbox's ecosystem, with games like Fable and even just early talks about New Vegas 2. Next up is Sony, who have surprisingly very little to talk about other than things still in development. There's the aforementioned PSVR 2, which will most likely get a lot of exclusives by Sony to help push the product, as well as Project Spartacus, which is Sony's Game Pass competitor. Instead of buying companies to help buff its value, it seems Sony will be relying on its legacy content from PS1, 2, and 3, and PSP, as well as some live service games from companies like Naughty Dog and Bungie. Finally, their investments into cloud gaming will most likely be worked into this project. Other than those projects, Sony just makes really good exclusives, While Microsoft mostly makes multiplayer games and the occasional amazing single-player game that are available on PC and console at the moment, Sony makes games only for their system, and they make enough good ones to make you want to get their console. I couldn't count the number of people that I know that have bought a PlayStation just for Spider-Man or God of War. I personally have been trying to get a PS5 for those games, as well as Ratchet & Clank, so it would make a lot of sense for Sony to keep these games exclusive, but they have slowly been going the Microsoft route, with God of War, Uncharted, and Horizon being ported to PC. Finally, the oldest of the bunch, Nintendo, who has shown to be mostly doing their own thing. They haven't focused on competing with Microsoft or Sony by making an underpowered console, which when heard without context might make you think, how are these guys still in business? But they focus on the casual market, unlike Microsoft and Sony. Since the Wii, they have marketed their console as something to just pick up and play, especially with the Switch because it's a hybrid. Nintendo has always been the best at handhelds, and after the failure of the Wii U, they decided, why don't we just mix them? So if you have any interest in Nintendo, or just platformers and party games, then you probably own a Switch. On top of that, Nintendo just has name recognition. It's why Mario has a theme park and movie coming out with everybody and their mother most likely gonna go see them. And it's not even like Nintendo does nothing, because they have an average around 7 good games out on Switch every single year. The only real problem Nintendo has had is online due to its poor quality, though Nintendo has shown they plan to continue the service with their next console while adding even more value to it.
I can't wait to finally beat paper, especially after all those rock, paper, scissors games. So, let's move on to my predictions.
Microsoft will most likely stay console makers, but will have an even bigger hold over PC and cloud gaming. While I could see them going third party, it just wouldn't make sense with Game Pass existing. Talking about Game Pass, it will probably be huge with at least 600 games, due to Microsoft's various acquisitions and deals. All Call of Duty games, Crash and Spyro games, and WoW will probably be ported to Xbox and made available on the service. Due to these factors, there will most likely be a major price increase, but other than that, Microsoft will stay a huge name in gaming. Then Sony, which will be the most surprising. I don't see them staying a first party at the rate they're going. While their exclusives are still massively successful and everybody's trying to get their hands on a PS5, they've shown to be much more open to PC gaming in recent years and have invested into VR and cloud gaming. While it might not happen in 10 years, it will happen sooner than the others in my opinion. And also, Project Spartacus probably won't do that great, but not bad either, just okay. And this is because of the lack of Spyro and Crash from the service. Crash and Spyro are a huge part of their history, but they most likely won't be there due to Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard. This would be like if Halo wasn't on Game Pass. And on top of all of that, Sony as a company is just failing, with them not doing much in tech anymore, and they only have the occasional hit with movies, usually due to Spider-Man. While Sony could still stay a prominent console maker due to their exclusives and recent success with movies due to Uncharted, I think that it's much more likely for them to go third party unless a company like Disney buys them for their movies. Finally, Nintendo, who I could see doing the best in the coming years. They have enough announced games to fuel them until their next console comes out with games like Breath of the Wild 2, Prime 4, Pokemon Gen 9, and Splatoon 3. And this is all without E3, which will most likely be full of games, because they've shown they want to send the Switch off with a bang. And they'll most likely do another hybrid console as it just makes sense to do so, and they'll most likely stay marketed to a casual audience because it would just help them rake in more sales. Then, for their biggest problem, online. I see it getting a lot better with more games and DLC added to the expansion pack to help increase the bang for your buck, as well as online in general getting better with better connections, accounts, and possibly even achievements. While it will never be as good as Xbox and PlayStation because it has to be accessible on the go, I do see it getting immensely better in the future.
Well, those are my predictions about console gaming. While it's entirely possible the three companies will go entirely different routes and console gaming will stay prominent, I do think it's important to note that console gaming is slowly fading away due to PC, cloud, and VR gaming. Well, let's check how paper could have possibly beat me this time before I finally win. I seriously thought I could have at least won this time.